And we're live. Thank you very much, Jace from the control room. I am Kevin Todderell from RMUS Canada, and I am joined, as always, by our Director of Technology, Fraser Hahn, from our Scenic HQ in Burlington, Ontario. And we are also joined, as always, by Jace in the control room and the legendary JT Von Lunen from Salt Lake City HQ. JT, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you.
Excellent. So, as always, inspirational words from our US team. So, thank you everybody for joining us today. We're very excited to finally be doing this, the Blue sUAS Throwdown. So this is day 12 of the 12 days of RMUS. So if you haven't seen it already, check out our LinkedIn for the 11 aircraft that we've done a little shallow dive on for the program. And so today we are basically coming together for the 4 Blue sUAS that are remaining to talk about them in some depth. And we will go through each aircraft in detail and talk about some of our recommendations for that. But before we get too much into that, for some of those who are maybe not clear, I just want to give you a brief summary of what is the Blue sUAS, and more importantly, why did it come about? And essentially, what it came about was to help to promote the growth of U.S. and Allied-made small UAV products. And so what happened was the Defense Innovation Unit in the U.S. came together to create some standards and drive some innovation in the space for small sUAS. So there were a number of criteria. There was a few dozen companies, and they were whittled down to 5 at the time there, now 4. And really what they had to do to qualify for the program was to build small sUAS that were less than 3 pounds, had a flight range of greater than 3 kilometers, very easy to set up in less than 2 minutes, came with a high-res day-night camera, so they were capable of day and night operations, less than 2-minute setup time, but 30-minute flight time, and have some weather resistance to be IP53 rated. So those were the 5. One of those has since kind of dropped out / been withdrawn, and that was the Altavian Ion, which was acquired by FLIR, then Teledyne, and I think was withdrawn off the market. So they did qualify, but they were not available for testing, and I'm not frankly sure of their status right now. So the focal point on the 4 today, and I will do, for full disclosure, up here in Canada, we represent all 4 of these in Canada. Our U.S. team represents 3 of the 4, all but Skydio down in the U.S. So take that for what it is. I like to think we don't have any bias here in the testing, and we'll talk in a little bit more about the testing. Couple of caveats before I pass it along to Fraser to talk about what the testing criteria were. Number 1, keep in mind these were designed for short-range reconnaissance. So there's a lot of talk about using for inspection and other uses, but it's important to remember is these are not inspection platforms. So really the state-of-the-art in cutting-edge inspection, it requires preferably some optical zoom, and for the most normal workflows, it requires a FLIR radiometric system. So right now, really the standard for this is DJI M300 equipped with the H20T sensor, or for the small sUAS, the best one we think is the Auto Evo 2 Dual with the FLIR Boson radiometric. So it's important to say these are you could do inspections, but they're certainly not at the level of what it is. So they are primarily designed right now, and we'll discuss where there are exceptions to this, for that kind of reconnaissance, public safety, visual observation. Second caveat, all of these, as part of our testing, we did test in indoor scenarios, but at the end of the tests, what we will tell you is if you have extensive requirements for indoor or underground cave type scenarios, that you need to look at either the Brink or the Loki for those tactical operations, if that is what you need. So we are not going to talk about them in detail today. We will do a separate one to follow up on those, but they were tested in these same scenarios, but they're not themselves part of the Blue program. So last of all, they were tested, real world side by side. So we're not going to reiterate the manufacturer specs today. If you want to do that, you can fly it online. We were more interested in what these things did, not what the marketing teams said they could do. And there's some pretty formidable marketing teams amongst the four of them, particularly shout out to the Skydio team that seems to be absolutely everywhere on LinkedIn. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass it over to Fraser here, and he'll talk about the tests themselves, what we did, how we did them. And then I'll also finally add that these are specifically focused on the four Blue sUAS 1.0s. We did test earlier in the summer a full slate of the non-Blue sUAS small aircraft. You can find that. We'll have the link in the YouTube channel when we post this after. So if you're interested in the performance of those, they were tested under slightly different criteria, but you can have a look at those separately. So without further ado, Fraser, why don't you talk about how we did this test, what we did, what our objectives were.
Thanks, Kevin. So as you said, the goal was to really challenge these systems in real world conditions. So we don't want to know what the manufacturer says the flight time is. We want to know what the actual flight time is, taking into account a safety factor to land in the wind when maneuvering and doing other meaningful work, for example. So these are all tests where we can easily do apples to apples comparisons. Like some aircraft do certain things very well, and we need to find scenarios where we can put them all in the same test. So this is not, I want to explain the parameters of some of the scenarios we do. This is not an exhaustive list of those tests, but you will see all the tests later. So for flight time, we basically just recorded the flight endurance of the aircraft in the course of other testing 5 times and took the average. So these are real flights. We pushed the battery to 15% or more. So we did use up the full battery, but we were doing meaningful work in other testing. So these were not hovering stationary, for example. So took the average of five flights, and that gives us the flight time in real world conditions for those systems. Max speed, we flew the systems in all 4 directions, north, south, east, west, just to negate the effects of wind, because what we want is the effective ground speed of the system. So we took the average of those 4 values. That gives us the average speed for the systems in real world conditions. Indoor performance, we're going to talk about a little bit. Obviously, the results are sort of subjective. It's how we feel the system performs, whether it's suitable or not. And we're going to get into a bit of detail about why and how they perform well or not. Covert range, that's how observable is the system. How far away can we hear it? We test that at 40 meters altitude or 130 feet. And the value we're giving, the result is how far away is the aircraft before we can start to actually hear it and be aware of its presence. Deployment time, that's just the shortest time that we were able to get the aircraft unpacked, initialized, and in the air. So that takes into account the physical setup, but also any initialization for the system. Nighttime performance, again, that's sort of subjective, but it takes in a few factors. The performance of the sensors, how easy it is to see the aircraft on takeoff and landing, how adjustable is the brightness on the screen, and a few other things. But again, that's sort of a subjective result where we're going to give a grading on the nighttime performance for these systems. And then sensor performance. We really did do apples to apples comparisons on the visual and thermal sensors for each of these systems. We basically took shots of the same target at different ranges. And we have those files. If you want to do direct comparisons, you can get in touch with us. We'll give you access to the files. As Kevin said, these systems are sometimes suitable for inspection, but really we're mainly interested in the sort of real-time tactical type scenarios. So the resolution of the recorded files is perhaps less important in these scenarios, but we didn't want to ignore that entirely. And we can give you access to those files for your own comparisons if you want.
Perfect. So our agenda for today is we're going to run now right into discussing the aircraft individually, what we liked, what we didn't like, a little bit of the unique characteristics of each. We'll do that for all 4 of them, and then we will actually summarize the test results. We have a nice chart with you so you can see all the main tests, how they performed with each other. And then we'll kind of close our portion of the presentation with some awards, who performed the best in what area, and then we will throw it wide open for questions. And so if you see in front of me, we have the Parrot, we have the Skydio, and we have the Vantage. We do not have a Teal. We are sold out of those. So George, don't take it personally. It's nothing against you that it's not here, but we definitely have the others there in front of us. So without further ado, let's get right into it. We picked the order of these in alphabetical order. So for those of you who have a last name like T, like I do, you can imagine the surprise of everybody when something with a P for Parrot ended up being first in an alphabetical order test. So we're going to start out with the Anafi USA. So Parrot, of course, as many of you know, is an old hand at the drone game. Really started on the consumer side and have pretty much moved exclusively now to military and commercial. They are, for the most part, manufactured overseas. The Anafi USA, though, and the AnafiUSA.gov are manufactured in the United States of America, in Boston, actually. And so Parrot's been doing this a long time. If we look at them, they're the farthest along in terms of when they launched the products and their ability to scale right now. So we've had more flight time prior to the tests on these than anything else. Now, so we do need to talk a little bit about Parrot and their manufacturing in the U.S. So they made a pretty bold step to do this, and they were affected pretty dramatically by COVID, and they weren't able to send their engineers over to the U.S. to actually do the QA. And so when we first got these Parrots, we have to do full disclosure, there were some quality issues. And this is to be expected with any platform. Some of you that are in the business will remember, what became the de facto platform for the medium size, the DJI M210s. There were all kinds of issues with those when they launched too. So certainly manufacturer issues on the Q&A side from the manufacturing partner. Parrot, I think, to their credit, did the Johnson & Johnson approach, immediately took control, moved the QA of these products back to France at their expense, and they have had a quantum improvement in performance to the point now where I would say they're probably the most reliable of all these systems, and they've done an amazing job and certainly have improved throughout. So very, very happy to see the testing improved on the Parrots. The one other thing to note about the Parrots is they're kind of priced in the mid-tier, close to where Teal is, but they have done something strategically that is different from the other two. And while it may not work for all you military customers, for public safety that doesn't specifically need an NDAA compliant controller, they have kind of a hobby grade controller, which is still commercially produced and has all the security features, except it is not NDAA compliant, but the product is half the price. So that actually makes Parrot the exact same aircraft an option for the most budget conscious. So they've made an interesting decision. And then of course they have the full NDAA compliant controller as well. So kudos to Parrot for really, really making that available to a broader group of people. So Fraser, why don't you talk about what we thought about the flight characteristics and everything good there?
Sure. So first impressions of the Anafi USA, it's probably the closest thing to like a conventional quadcopter that we have in this bunch of 4. I must say it's a very light aircraft. I dare say it feels a bit flimsy when you first handle it. Not that really any aircraft is actually designed to sustain crashes, or most certainly aren't. The Anafi USA has most things about it are very much up to par. So things like position hold capability, gimbal stability, those things are rock solid, like we've come to expect from the top tier manufacturers. UI, very lots of tools, very flexible, relatively intuitive. So that's a positive. The probably the greatest strength of the NFE USA, and it's sort of immediately apparent when you fly it, is the sensors. They've done something really interesting. So in the visible spectrum, they've got two sensors, a wide angle and a telephoto lens. And they're combining the images from both sensors, much like some modern smartphones are doing. And this allows them to optimize the resolution at different stages of digital zoom. So what we see is that we can zoom right in on targets, and periodically the image will sharpen up. And we've effectively got much, much better digital zoom than really anything could possibly achieve with a single sensor. And that actually works very well. So it's good. The NFE USA gives a very good overall impression. It's enjoyable to fly. Flight characteristics, I would say, are precise. And there's also a lot of flexibility in how it's going to fly. There are 4 presets, and for each of these presets, you can adjust flight parameters basically to your heart's content. So yaw rate, max tilt rates, things of that nature. You can really customize how this aircraft flies and save up to 4 presets for different operators or different scenarios. And then also it's got nearly the broadest temp range and fairly long flight time. So overall, it's a good package in almost every scenario.
Perfect. Thanks, Fraser. And we've tested this in the cold Canadian winter. So one thing to note, we did these testing in warmer weather. We did not test the extreme conditions. But our friends at the RCMP in Manitoba, for you Americans that don't know where that is, it's cold. So we had it up there in minus 20 Celsius with some nasty wind chill. And we ended up getting 15-minute flight time and then having it come back with 40% battery. So pretty impressive. So that'd be somewhere around the 23-minute flight time, even at those really sub conditions. So what do we recommend this particular aircraft for? General use. This is the all-rounder. It worked pretty well indoors. It works outdoors. Great sensor, great at night, good and cold. And the options, as we mentioned, is you can get it about in the mid-range of the blue spectrum for costing, and then you can get the civilian version for about half that price, which is much lower than any of the other options. So that's what it's recommended for. Excellent platform. We were quite impressed with it. So let's talk a little bit about our second platform, the Skydio X2D. So the X2D, do you want to model it maybe while I'm talking the first part? So this is the X2D version. So this is the pure mil spec. So what this allows us to do is completely offline firmware upgrades, everything like that. Skydio itself is a Silicon Valley company. Those of you that follow their formidable LinkedIn will know that they've raised it's over $100 million. So in terms of funding, they're the most well-funded. They are truly a Silicon Valley company, and so that is for all the good or ill of that. The interesting approach that they have, different to everybody else, is ultimately, I think if you'd ask them, they're a software company. So their philosophy seems to be, we are going to improve this product with the use of software. And that has advantages of being able to update quickly, being able to add some of the really interesting features like the super zoom, 3D scan, all kinds of these things, and being able to build and continue to improve the performance of the aircraft that way. The downside, of course, as with any software company, is you're going to be paying ongoing costs. And so you're going to have a yearly bill with that as well. This is the most expensive platform when you factor in the hardware, plus when you add the software required to use it. It's about 20% more expensive than the Parrot and the Teal, and approximately double what the Vesper is. So the question is, for the features and the things it does extremely well, is that going to suit your use case? And there certainly are a few cases, if not many cases, where it does. So Fraser, I'm going to pass it on to you to discuss what we thought of the aircraft overall.
Great. So I was particularly excited to finally get my hands on one of these. So I'll be happy to talk about that. First impression, it really looks the part. I don't think I need to say more than that. It certainly looks like an industrial or a defense-oriented machine. It's really robust, and it's designed in such a way that it can be taken out, set up and basically ready to fly using gloves The latches there are very robust and very easy to operate that lock the arms in place. The X2D's also got my favorite of the Aurora controllers. Just give you an example, it's a directional antenna, forms a cover that protects the whole controller and closes over top of the control sticks, keeping everything nice and protected. The specs of the Skydio X2D, of course, those that needed to meet Blue sUAS specs, such as sensor resolution, are on par with the others. But you'll find that most of the other specs are not really up to par with the bunch of aircraft we have here, with the exception of range. Transmission range is very good and actually gives you some cool options to play with there. And that's part of Skydio's philosophy, I think, of just relying on the software to make this as best machine it can be. And that comes down to also things like digital zoom are not necessarily prioritized because, of course, we can get closer using this machine because of the magic that is the sky obstacle avoidance. And my impressions of that were that it works exactly as advertised. It's incredibly impressive to see in action. So overall, a good platform.
Why don't we have a quick look at that video?
Oh, let's do it.
Jace, can you fire off and let's let people see how incredible it is. So this is a back end of one of the warehouses we share. Those are, I don't know, those are probably 1/4 of an inch. Basically something you wouldn't want anything else anywhere near it.
And the impressive thing to me here is that although it's sort of, it looks like the aircraft stopping and starting, it's flying through there in a relatively fluid way. And this is not some FPV pilot trying to pull a fast one on anyone. This is basically just full left stick forward. So I think one of the side effects of this approach is that there's a lot of processing power required. And the result of that is that we've got a very big aircraft. It's the biggest aircraft of the bunch. And we're going to see that that's a bit of a hindrance. Actually, the aircraft's large size is going to be a serious limitation in one of these test scenarios. So let's remember that.
Fraser, this is JT. While you're flying that, is it alerting the pilot of the obstacles as it's doing that?
No. You'll certainly know there's an obstacle there because it'll start doing its own thing. And in an environment like that, it's doing its own thing most of the time. That's really the only way that the pilot knows there's an obstacle there.
I see.
And let's add, we represent the Emerson hover map, which is a new technological marvel and significantly more expensive. And I would be nervous about running that through this exact scenario. Okay, thanks, Jace. If you wanna come back. Perfect. So what do we recommend? What do we recommend Skydio for? So obviously, if you really need obstacle avoidance, this is by far the best. That's not just of the Blue sUAS. This is among everybody. So this is the platform for you in that case. Secondarily, I think for some applications where you're going to be out in the field with challenging conditions and you maybe are in mission critical things where you can't afford to have any kind of a crash, you don't want to be carrying parts, you don't want to be going through parts. The case for spending a little bit more upfront on this is you can potentially avoid a number of accidents that's going to keep the requirement for having tons of parts on there. It is hard to crash this thing on purpose or by accident by yourself without some kind of an equipment failure. The other part of this is the software. Pretty amazing. I think this platform has tremendous application for some industrial scanning. We have not tested the 3D scan. The results I've seen show pretty amazing point clouds that you get. So when I said maybe not an inspection platform, this is potentially one that might be an excellent inspection platform for the point cloud. So we'll do an in-depth deep dive on that, compare it with some of the SLAM LiDAR systems out there, and give you a good opportunity there, because obviously the SLAM LiDAR is significantly more expensive. So good platform, really excited about the technology and to continue to see what they have. So, all right, let's move on to the Teal Golden Eagle platform. So Teal is a Silicon Valley Light company. Obviously, there was some Silicon Valley funding but they are headquartered out of Utah. Important to note, they just were acquired and raised a whole bunch of funding, and they're now part of a listed NASDAQ organization with $60 million of capital. So to me, this is a super exciting company to watch. George, who is the CEO, is a wonderful guy, and more importantly, he's a proper drone geek, and he loves the hardware. So while they are certainly developing software, this is all about the hardware platform, and we love what they've done with the platform, as Fraser will tell you. So let's talk about what we found with the Golden Eagle. And actually, sorry, Jace, why don't we quickly roll that video, and then we'll pass it on to Fraser.
So as you can see, the form factor of the Golden Eagle is a little unique. It lands right on its belly, and I say this in the nicest possible way. The aircraft is built like a brick. It is just super robust. It's actually designed to be crash and repaired, as we're going to see here. Basically, single tool, single fastener arm replacement in the field, and those things are included in the kit that comes with the aircraft. So it's going to take a beating and keep flying without actually coming home for repairs. It's also the fastest. It's a little short on flight time. Even in the time that we've been operating the Golden Eagle, the flight characteristics have improved dramatically. I expect they'll continue to do so. Teal being a newer company, a smaller company, there are some issues that we'll acknowledge as we get into the testing results. But overall, this is a system that is going to work very well in outdoor high wind type environments, getting ready to go fast, long range reconnaissance, things of that nature. And as we'll see, sensor quality is quite good. Overall, a good package.
So I think it's important to note with these things, one of the great things about being RMUS is we get this stuff early. And so we get to test it. And as a result of that, we get to, and when I say we, I actually mean Fraser and Sam and Brian, get to crash these things. So the amazing thing about this platform is this thing is tough. This thing is really tough. This is by far the most durable and robust and easiest to repair in the field. So I think for a lot of, dare I say, some of the clumsier pilots or in rougher environments, this is a great one to be able to repair on the fly for sure. And we liked a lot about it. In terms of the roadmap, what's coming up, this is really exciting. They're working on a ton of new features. One of the things that we haven't tested yet, but it's available now, is there's a photogrammetry package that has a fixed frame sensor and is designed specifically for photogrammetry. So again, we talk a little bit about the inspection platforms and mapping. This is one that is capable of doing mapping now. And also because of the modular nature that the other ones don't have, you're going to be able to easily change out cameras. And I know they're working on creating an upgrade to what the Evo 2 Dual uses, which is the FLIR Boson radiometric. So all of a sudden, this is potentially going to be a really, really solid inspection platform.
Yeah, and just to add a bit to the modularity concept, Teal is working on multiple payloads, longer arms for longer endurance and faster flight, larger batteries, and different control systems. So this will be possible to operate the Golden Eagle with different controllers in the future as well.
Perfect. So we recommend this for applications in public safety where you do want a little bit more flexibility to be able to do things like collision scene mapping, perhaps, or if you're out in the field to do some mapping. Obviously, if you have rugged use, this is a great platform for that. One of the things was it was tremendous at night. So if you do a lot of night operations, this is a great aircraft to use. And then the longer term potential in terms of inspections. And again, it's kind of on the mid price range. Okay, so last platform we're going to chat a little bit about is, Fraser, if you can grab me that one, is the Vantage Robotics. So Vantage Robotics is a California company, lots of smart engineers. Tobin, their CEO, and the gang, they are They are true, also true drone geeks like George is. No offense to this with anybody. So they've been doing this since about 2013. I will say they are taking, again, the hardware approach. And if Skydio has the most interesting and unique approach to the software, this platform by far has the most unique design approach. Really, really fascinating, and we'll kind of break it apart here. Now, I will say a caveat on this platform, and I really think it should be an overview of everything. When we talk about where we are in terms of production and readiness, the Parrot and the Skydio have the most reps and are the most reliable out in the field. Teal is moving quickly to catch up, but is not quite at the same consistently level as those two. And unfortunately, the Vantage is in fourth place for that. Now, they've been super busy with government contracts for both the Vesper and some other things. So clearly they're putting out some volumes in other places. But we had all kinds of problems with our test unit. We got a second unit that we sent that we completed the test, which was better, but still not quite up to par. But I think a lot of that is a function of this being the most unique design. And there's no question in my mind that this has the highest potential from a hardware to be the best platform out of all of them if they continue to improve it. So it's important. I'll talk about that at the end. It's important to note all of those things when we talk about the Vesper platform. So Frage, well, I'll maybe supermodel it, and you can talk about what we.
Actually like
Oh, you want to
as I go.
supermodel?
Sure.
Okay, all right,
So,
go for it.
So yeah, I think it's definitely the case that the best is still to come for this product, but I'm already aware of at least one scenario that I think it's probably the best for. So we'll get to that. This hardware concept literally blew my mind the first time I saw it. So we have folding arms. That's okay. They all have those. If we need to replace a propeller, the way we do that is actually by pulling the whole motor bell off. It's just held into the coils on the motor by its own magnetism. So we can change props without tools, with gloves on, in like a second or two. That's pretty neat. The battery also is held on with a magnet. That seems really cool. There's actually a pretty major downside to that, which we'll get to. And best of all, the actual body separates from this rotor set. And although we don't have it today, there's a second entire rotor set provided with shrouded rotors for flying indoors. So we can take the body of the aircraft off while it's booted up and initialized and paired with the radio. We can see that it's still powered on. Pop it into another rotor set and continue flying for a different scenario. So this thing is potentially very versatile. It could really do lots of different jobs. It can do outdoor long-range reconnaissance, and it can do indoor tactical reconnaissance. That is extremely cool. Unfortunately, as Kevin said, our experience testing this was not quite, I wouldn't call it a pleasure. The Vesper does fly quite well, but we had some really serious issues just getting it initialized, paired with the radio. Our understanding is that there's an issue perhaps with the radios that are being used right now, at least in the units that we had. We can't speak more broadly, but specs are quite good. Flight time, excellent. Range, pretty good. Speed, quite good. Overall flying experience, when it works, pretty good. The unfortunate thing is we didn't really get to test it as thoroughly as we would like to because of the issues we had with our units during testing.
Okay, thanks, Fraser. So what do we recommend? And I want to say to Tobin and all the Team Advantage, this is an incredible design. We love it. There's nothing more we want to do than see this thing perform. But the reality is there's real questions of whether this is going to be manufacturer at quality and scale. So our recommendation at this point is watch these very closely. As soon as we can get newer versions to test, we will test and we will update. But right now, this one is a hold off on for us at the moment. Okay, so let's talk about the results of the testing, shall we? What we're going to do is we're going to just show you a quick slide, and we will walk you through all the actual physical test results of what we did. Again, if you want specific data sets, we have all the imagery for the tests we did on the cameras, you can email us. We'll send those to you directly. And then we'll be able to share those. And so without that, with that in mind, Jason, if you can share the screen with that, we'll talk about all the tests there.
Okay, guys, so bear with us. We're going to get pretty nitty gritty here, but I'll try to breeze through this as quickly as I can. Starting again in alphabetical order with the Paradigm for USA. Okay, we know the visible resolution is 21 megapixels, but there's more to the story because of the two sensor configuration that I described earlier. When we start zooming in, the loss of resolution, the degradation there is much less than we would expect from like a standard 21 megapixel sensor. So that's why the asterisk there. Thermal resolution, again, par for the course in Blue sUAS. We got 320 by 256. This aircraft is IP rated it's IP53. The average of those 5 flights was 25 minutes, 30 seconds. That's pretty good, sort of middle of the pack here. Transmission range, also quite good. We were surprised and impressed. 2.7 miles or 4 kilometers. By the way, we did this in a controlled environment. We had full authorization to do these tests. Max speed of the NFUSA, again, recorded in all 4 cardinal directions, was quite good. 34 miles an hour or 54 kilometers an hour for us Canadians. The temp range is the second broadest of these. You can see it there. Indoor performance, we gave it a B grade. Basically, many of you probably had the experience of flying Mavic 2 Enterprises indoors, and this is effectively the same experience. The downward position sensor, got an ultrasonic sensor looking downward on the NFUSA. That enables position hold in GPS denied environments. The aircraft is not going to drift around. It's going to fly very much like a Mavic 2 Enterprise would indoors, but it's smaller, so it's easier to get around. I quite liked flying it indoors, to be honest. Obstacle avoidance, no, doesn't have it. Covert range was about 650 feet or 200 meters. Again, that's how far away does the aircraft have to be before we can no longer hear it. And that was on the better side, not the best, but quite good. Deployment time, also pretty good for the NFUSA, under a minute. The nighttime performance, we graded it B. So it was perfectly adequate in every regard at night. We do have some lighting on the aircraft. We can adjust brightness on the screen, things like that. It'd be nice to have a bit more prominent lighting on the aircraft, and it'd be great if the operator could adjust that remotely as well, just so that you could enable it for landing and then disable it when you need to be covert, for example. NFUSA probably would have been a clear winner at nighttime performance if the low light performance of its visible sensor was better. Sometimes at night, you're looking at lit environments and you want to use the visible sensor. If the low light performance is no good, that's a limitation.
So I would say, Fraser, before we move on, I mean, I think we were all really surprised that the small size and everything for indoor flight was great. And it's important to note, kind of unique among these manufacturers. Parrot does what I think is a really smart thing, is it just doesn't make you pay extra for obstacle avoidance. And the theory, which I am 100% a proponent of, is for most public safety and outdoor applications, you're in a lot of space, right? And so it's just adding additional cost to it in a lot of cases. Now, obviously, you're not going to take this near what we saw the Skydio flying through earlier. So if you are in areas where there's branches or power lines, like urban environments, then it's a different story. But actually, for big structures, this was great. It was small enough to fit through all of them. Really, really stable altitude hold. It was really impressive compared to what we thought. So,
bottom line is, if you're a competent pilot, you can do it effectively. Like,
right.
You might crash eventually, but it's certainly possible to try to do it. So that's a good option.
And you think that's the most tunable of these? If you're an ace pilot, that's
very good point, because I would really want to subdue the flight characteristics indoors so that things are nice and slow, and I have full capability to adjust that.
Perfect.
Good point.
Okay, Jason, you can fire that chart back up there. Let's talk about the Skydio X2D. And again, this is a really solid platform. It's heavy. You know, heavy is good. Heavy is reliable, as they say with Boris the Blade there. So
exactly. So the camera resolution is 12 megapixel. That's par for the course here. Same thing with thermal resolution. Ingress protection, as far as we know, it's not rated or not stated what the rating is, although that's sort of, we sort of thought that was a requirement for the spec. Flight time, 25 minutes, 30 seconds, same as the Parrot Anaphy, and putting it firmly in the middle of the pack here. Transmission range, 3.4 miles or 5.4 kilometers, which is the best of the bunch. And I need to add that there's a narrow band transmission mode that in our testing actually doubled that range. So that means you can effectively get up to 7 miles range if you really want to.
And let me just jump in there too. So just so you know, there's two versions available of this, the 1.8, which is military only, and the 5.0. We tested both versions. And I think if I recall, the 1.8 got even more range, if I'm not mistaken.
It very likely did. I don't know that I.
Okay, but so the specs you're seeing up there are for the 5.0 with the new radio.
Right. Just to clarify, so the spec that we saw first, 3.4 miles, that is standard omnidirectional mode, and with a directional mode, we can basically double that. Okay, JSCOOD, perfect. Max speed here, it's the slowest, and that really does temper how great the range is, because if the aircraft's slow, it's going to take forever to get out there and back. So that is actually quite relevant. Also, if you recall, we tested the speed of these systems in all four directions to try to negate the effects of wind, and we found that the Skydio's recorded speeds were much less consistent than the others, which might indicate that the X2D is more affected by wind direction and wind speed than other systems. That's probably the cause of what I just said there. Temperature range, again, relatively poor among the Blue sUAS craft. Indoor performance, this might be a surprise, but it just doesn't perform well indoors.
How does that happen? And we saw it performing pretty well in that indoor scenario, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think we need to talk a little bit more about this.
Definitely a bit of a nuanced issue. So actually, Skydio even acknowledges on their website that it's not really suitable for confined spaces. You can fly it indoors because it'll avoid obstacles, but the reality is you can't get through a horizontal opening less than about 34 inches. So most standard doors you just can't fly through with the X2D. And that means you can't effectively explore indoor environments. You could explore a mall, but not a house. So it's not a suitable indoor tool. Like, you wouldn't buy it for that purpose. If you decide to turn off obstacle avoidance and try to get through that narrow gap, it's not going to work because, unfortunately, the X2D flies a bit like a boat. The flight characteristics are so imprecise because it's designed to rely on that obstacle avoidance that you're going to overcorrect and crash into something as soon as the obstacle avoidance is off. So it's just not recommended to fly it indoors, despite how magical the obstacle avoidance really is.
Right. And I think if you're inside with a lot of stuff, like in our warehouse, things like that, it's great. Now, again, it's important to say that none of these, we wouldn't recommend any of these for extended indoor use anyway, right? So that's important to note, that this is a relative measure here as well. All right.
So having just said all of that, we really need to acknowledge how impressive this Skydio Special Sauce really is. Like, it's just amazing. The aircraft doesn't stop when it encounters an obstacle. It tries to fluidly maneuver around that. And so the result is that you can be in a complex environment just with obstacles everywhere, just pushing forward on your left stick, and the aircraft will move continuously and fairly fluidly through that. It's incredible.
Yeah, and my experience as a shitty pilot is that pilots that are medium and below love it because, like I said, you cannot crash it. And really, really experienced pilots are like, this is boring. I'm not flying it. It flies itself, which is, I think, for a lot of applications, that's exactly what you want. So
exactly. Yeah, actually, it begs the question of how effective it is for inspections. Because if the approach is to get really close up, but you can't, but the flight characteristics are not super precise, I wonder about that. Skydio gives us the option to reduce the size of the obstacle avoidance bubble down to what they call close, which is about 11 inches, or minimal, which is about 4 inches. And that's really the only way we can use it indoors. When we bring the bubble down to minimal, that's how we can get through openings about 34 inches. But we know that it increases the risk of crashing, And so I wonder, this is a paid feature, Skydio. Do you cover crashes? If I have obstacle avoidance on, but I still crash using your paid feature, am I going to pay for repairs? That's a question I have.
Okay, so let's move on. Talk about the teal golden eagle.
Just got a couple more to get through. Sorry. The covert range relatively poor here. Big craft. Deployment time good. There's a tactical case that comes with it, so it's easy to get this thing up and running. Even though the autonomy engine needs to initialize, that calibration can happen pretty quickly, such that the whole process is on par with the other systems we tested. Nighttime performance, it's okay. Basically, the autonomy features don't work at night. They generally stop working in low light before we get to dusk. So at night, the X2D performs like a Skydio without autonomy, which is to say, okay, the visual sensors are good, as is the thermal sensor. The adjustable lighting on the aircraft is excellent. It's very customizable remotely by the operator, including IR visible options. The issue is that it doesn't fly very precisely. And when we don't have autonomy on, there's no backup downward sensor. So combination of no downward sensor and imprecise flight characteristics means we tend to have some pretty hard landings, and we're landing right on the battery. So it's recommended to hand catch the X2D at night, and unfortunately that's just not always possible. So we do have some issues operating this at night.
Perfect. All right, let's talk a little bit about the teal's golden eagle results.
Okay, so Golden Eagle is using the FLIR Hadron sensor package, which means its visible and thermal specs are exactly par for the course here. Sorry, Jace, I need that back. IP rating is also not stated. We don't know if it hasn't been tested or if it's not stated. Flight time for the Golden Eagle is relatively poor. It's a heavy aircraft, but there is or there will soon be a extended battery available, and Teal says it'll at least double that flight time we're seeing there. Transmission range was sort of middle of the pack. Flight speed was the best, very good. Temp range also very good. Indoor performance, we're giving it an F for now. We maybe could have given it a not evaluated, but the reality is right now it's not suitable for indoor flight. Teal is bringing in their visual inertial odometry soon, which will give us position hold capability in GPS denied environments and also forward obstacle avoidance. But since it's not available yet, we obviously weren't able to test it. It's probably worth noting that might dramatically change the grading there when it comes in. We'll have to see. Mm-hmm. Obstacle avoidance, obviously not there. We don't have access to it yet. Covert range was long. This aircraft's heavy. It's pretty loud. So that's something to be aware of as well. And nighttime performance. Okay, so it's got adjustable lighting. That was nice. The sensors performed very well, particularly the visible sensor. It was great in low light conditions. And the representation of the thermal image with this system was the best, in our opinion, and also in the opinion of some operators that we were doing these tests with. This was the system that they would prefer to surveil in the thermal spectrum with. So that was neat to see.
Perfect. How about Vantage?
Okay, so visible resolution on the Vantage is the lowest of the bunch. They give us 48 times digital zoom, but it's actually pretty useless at that level. The gimbal performance is good, very stable, so no real issues there. Occasional jitters, but nothing serious to worry about. It is IP rated at 53, and actually, if we've got it in its tactical case, then it's IP67 rated, and also crush proof up to a couple 100 pounds, I think, in that case. The flight time is excellent. Okay, it was the longest flight times we recorded here, and there's also going to be an extended battery available for this, so that would really put it over the top. I think that Vantage says the flight time with the extended battery might be over 50 minutes, which would be incredible. I want to say that high speed capability plus the long flight times might enable some pretty cool use cases. So keep that in mind. Temp range is it's okay. It's doing okay there. Indoor performance, C. Now this might be a bit of a surprise because there are shrouded rotors provided with this system, right? So we should be able to bump into things and keep flying. Sometimes we can do that, but sometimes the battery dislodges when that happens because it's held on by magnets. And so the aircraft can experience a loss of power, even with small bumps. And it crashes. And it's not going to crash in such a way that it can right itself and keep flying because it's lost the battery. So that's something to look at, maybe Vantage. It's great to have shrouded rotors provided for those indoor scenarios, but if a small bump means my power is lost, then I can't really use the system indoors. Okay, obstacle avoidance, it's not present. We do have downward sensor giving us position hold capability, but no obstacle avoidance. And I don't believe any is projected on the roadmap for the system either. Covert range was very good. It's really hard to hear the system. It's quiet, it's light. It's also really hard to see it. So we've got something that flies for a really long time, really fast, and it's very low observability. That might enable some neat stuff, so keep that in mind. It's definitely the strength of this system. Deployment time, I didn't really feel comfortable putting a number on this, unfortunately, because this is the crux of the issues we had in testing with the Vesper, is that there was a radio issue. Like we could not reliably bind the radios to the aircraft. And so the setup initialization time was anything from a few minutes to over an hour. And it just, obviously it's not acceptable. And I don't feel that we have a good understanding of that. So we're leaving that blank for now, but keep in mind that's a potential issue with, at least with the units that we tested. Nighttime performance. The Vesper's visual sensor has a really good low light performance, but otherwise we weren't particularly happy at night. The lighting on the aircraft makes it really hard to determine its orientation, and I don't really have an explanation for this, but I started experiencing some really wild sort of issues with position hold. The aircraft could not seem to hold position at all close to the ground in the dark, and that sort of spooked me at times. So potential issues there.
Perfect. So that's kind of a summary. So we'll talk, if you just leave that up for a sec for me, Jace. So we'll talk a little bit about what the final takes on this were. I do want to note a couple of these things. Again, I've said it a few times throughout the session here. These are new platforms and they're continuously evolving. So we expect improvements in all those areas. So if we look at something like transmission ranges, that was an area where we saw big improvements early from Parrot. So I will expect we will also see big improvements from Teal and Vantage, if not Skydio as well. So that'll be very important. And a lot of these individuals, Teal, Vantage, are continuing to start to develop software that's going to be useful for adding obstacle avoidance and different things like that. So again, these are going to evolve. So we'll look forward to revisiting all these tests in the next year or so. So with that in mind, let's give away some RMUS awards. The RMUSs? I like it. Is that a thing? RMUSs? So we do have a number of awards. So we're going to give the first award for the best all-around platform. And so what I want to clarify is this is not the best platform, because that will really depend on the majority of your use case. What this award for is for the Swiss Army knife, basically. So what is an aircraft that performs well over the broadest area of applications? And our best all-around winner in this was the Parrot Anafi USA. So congratulations to Parrot. Maybe we should have envelopes for this next time. Second award is the best night operations platform. And that award goes to
Teal
Golden Eagle. So congratulations to the Teal team. Excellent night operations. Probably one of the more surprising ones. And it was interesting because I think it has basically the same sensor as Skydio. Mm-hmm. But they have their own secret sauce on the software side or whatever they do on the back end. And it was excellent performance. And again, yeah, we'll give honorable mention to Skydio in this as well. Probably also worth noting that Vantage they're the only one that doesn't use a FLIR based sensor, but we'll have another award for sensors. In fact, it's the next award. So the best overall sensor award drum roll, since we're doing the drum roll. Parrot Anafi USA. And so Fraser talked a little bit about it, but do you want to add anything else why that took home the coveted sensor award?
Well, we've explained a bit of how it works, and I think the bottom line is that it's just very, very good at visual zoom. It's like way, way better. It's in a league of its own. So that's why it wins.
All right. Our next award is Best Obstacle Avoidance. And I will add, again, if you go back and have a look at our small sUAS throwdown where we tested everything out there of the main platforms with obstacle avoidance, and we're actually going to include them in this. It makes no difference. There's a pretty clear winner. I'll do the drum roll. Fraser, you can do the announcement. Skydio.
Shocker.
No one saw that one coming. So congratulations to the Skydio team for that coveted award. The best indoor platform. I'll save you the expense. There was no award given in this. We did test them extensively, but there's nothing we are going to recommend for extensive indoor use. Get yourself a lemur or a Loki. All right. Most innovative design. So again, I think that's pretty obvious here. Winner for that is the Vantage Vesper. And I will say this is a platform. I'm excited to see this platform in 6 months. I want to see them doing this at scale. Potentially, just everything about it is great. The changeovers. So if we get it worked out, this is, as I said before, it could potentially be the best all-arounder here. So congratulations, Vantage. This one is the best UI. Again, this is something that tends to get overlooked and underrated, I think. But which platform had the best user interface, was the easiest to fly? So a little drum roll. Fraser, if you want to give us the announcement.
Yes, this definitely goes to the Anafi USA. Although I would say it's closely followed by the Skydio system.
So what did you particularly like about that UI?
Flexibility and flexibility without complexity.
Wow. Okay. All right. I like it. The next award is the best controller. I think we alluded to that. And the best controller winner is?
The best controller hardware is the Skydios.
So that combined with the UI is pretty powerful. What do we like about that? Because we've been known in the past to complain about controllers, haven't we?
So some of the controllers for the systems we've talked about have little stubby thumbsticks that I frankly dislike. But that's not the whole picture. Skydio's got a sort of innovative thing where there's this folding cover, which is also a directional antenna. It protects the screen, but also the control sticks and most of the buttons. The unit is not ruggedized, but it feels really well built. And I just like it. All
right. Well, congratulations, Skydio, for that. The Tough Man Award, or sorry, we're in Canada. Tough Person Award, toughest. I'm in quicksand. It's the tough Award, and that award will go to
the Teal
Golden Eagle. Yeah, we loved the toughness. It's an exceptionally well-built aircraft. It's exceptionally modular. If you are able to break something, you're going to be able to change it easily with one screw. This is a really, really well thought out platform for people that are going to be hard on this, i.e. everybody in public safety and military. And our final award of the, I guess, afternoon, not the evening, is the Longest Flight Time Award. And that award goes to the Vantage Vesper. So again, really, really exceptionally good flight times, the longest, even without the endurance battery. Tremendous range once the transmission range improves. Super fast and really, really quiet. So really, really interesting for mission profiles once we're ready to rumble. JT, I'm going to throw it to Salt Lake if you want to add any comments before we wrap things up.
No, I think that this is very good information. I think the nice thing is we're all going to probably have to go back and watch this a few times to get all the details. Thank you very much for putting this all together.
All right. Thanks, JT. So thanks, everybody, for sticking with us. Sorry, we can't do the Q&A. If you do have questions, obviously reach out to us directly. If you do want some of the photo and IR image data, we'll also be happy to share that with you, share our take. Please reach out to us here in Canada or with the US team. And so have a wonderful holiday season, and hopefully Santa is good to you all. So from Kevin Todrell
And from Fraser Hahn.
and Jace and
JT
JT in another ship, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.